What's good, YouTube, man? Back with another video. We're gonna be talking about another one of the big three, and in terms of their powers. And yes, Naruto, you're wrong. We're gonna get to him later. But what we're gonna get with is Luffy, the only technically current, still big three around today, coming out with new content. Right? You got Thousand Year Blood War arc, but that ain't new as far as like brand new. And Naruto's still in Boruto, but you know what's going on. But today we're gonna be talking about Luffy in Gear 5. Now, it's probably been a topic that's been beat to death by numerous people, and some people are right, some people feel they're right, some people feel they're wrong. They're wrong, just like anything. Anything with this topic is always going to be considered subjective, right? Because we're just judging on like how we feel about a form, and there's not really any objective way to view it. Because I mean, regardless of the fact is, Luffy had to get strong, and the only way for the author Oda to have done that is he felt the need to give Luffy Gear 5. Now, a lot of people don't have issues that Luffy became strong with Gear 5. A lot of people just don't like the way it kind of seems to change Luffy's character. But I feel like that's the biggest part that people just are just so blatantly wrong about. Hear me out. People say when Luffy goes to Gear 5, oh, he's no longer serious anymore. He's always laughing and playing and joking, not taking things as serious. And then they'll reference Luffy being serious at certain points, like might be like, oh look, he was so serious against Arlong, serious against the admirals. It was just like, and even like early Wano, like when he got enraged and attacked Kaido, it was really like you could see the emotion, right? It was more of a serious tone. But the thing is, like, Luffy has always been a goofy kind of carefree person, and I don't think Gear 5 has had its moments where it's still a little bit serious. Like you have that moment where he jumps in and grabs Saturn and Kizaru, kind of like in a serious manner. And and then in the Kaido fight, the literally debuted of Gear 5, there are serious moments where Luffy is like literally serious. Now, and it has a serious face, and he's actually, actually giving dialogue that actually is still coherent with what the main character of Luffy is. But I feel like a lot of people always forget that Luffy is the same guy that in Skypiea, his way to beat, the early stages of observation hockey was literally just to like fucking turn his brain off. Like he literally was like literally just like mush his head, and he was just literally just like moving around, no brain basically. Like his brain was just not even functioning, and that was like the way he fought. And we're also talking about the same guy that when he was fighting Arlong, he takes Arlong's teeth and then it's like chomping with him. It's like he fights in a goofy manner, and I feel like the Arlong one is the perfect example of how Luffy has always been like one to use off the wall stuff in fights, and then the same with I mean, obviously we go back to Skypiea. He's using the giant bell that his hand is stuck in. Obviously, he doesn't have a choice, but he fights with that. When he fights Crocodile, he's literally dousing himself in water, right? And you can say, oh, well, that's just to get around the Logia part. But I mean, it's still like in his character to think up ideas on like to use shit. And I feel like Gear 5 is you see him like sometimes like they call it Toon Force, where he's just like making stuff up as he goes along the way. But that goes in line with how Luffy has fought throughout the times. It's like he just like, oh, this would be a good thing to try. And you got to remember, Luffy came up with the gear system like in a unique way. So like when it's first debuted in Annie's lobby area, it's like, oh shit. who the hell would have thunk of this shit? You know what I'm saying? Whereas like obviously Gear 5, even though they're all called gears, but Gear 5 and Gear 4 are a little bit different because Gear 4 is obviously like a mixing of hockey, and then Gear 5 is literally a culmination of all of them on top of an awakening, but it's still you know in the he still refers to it as a gear because I mean it still is like it's the shonen trope. If you got a transformation here, you got a transformation there, you got to keep it going, right? The only time they really delve from that is like obviously like when they just change completely different forms. So they might just change the name, right? They do the Super Saiyan Blue. They want to change it. They don't. They could have kept it going. They could have said this was Super Saiyan 4, this was Super Saiyan 5, blah blah blah. But they decided to break away from it. But I feel like a lot of people just always get that wrong. That Luffy's character has never been a serious fighter. He takes his fight serious, like he actually wants to win, but in the sense of like he's still gonna enjoy the fight. He's still gonna be off the wall and creative when it comes to finding new ways to maybe combat his enemy, right? And you could see it as him goofing off, but you can also see it as like, oh, this guy is just like, he just loves fighting, and that's what Luffy does. Luffy is pretty much I don't want to call it a battle junkie, but Luffy is really big on loving battle, right? He's not like he doesn't like scream to it like Goku does, right? But he's still a big like he definitely out of the three out of Naruto, Ichigo, Luffy. Luffy definitely loves battle more than either of the two, and I barely feel like a lot of people agree that Luffy likes fighting more than those two. Naruto fights for like he does fight to preserve himself like as a ninja, but he also does like protect people. And Ichigo, his like whole life was really thrust to him. He only ever really fought for the sake of others. But Luffy is like he's a pirate. He knows he's entering in a life in conflict, and he wants that. But he also wants to be like the freest man. But he knows along the way that people are going to try and stop him from being free, and that's why I say that is because Gear Fifth is literally Luffy's freest form because he's able to just do whatever he wants to do. He's able to make sunglasses appear out of nowhere. He's able to pull up the ground and cause it to reflect a blast back at him. He's able to just run on the air and make his eyes pop out of his head and stuff like that. And I don't view that as negative. And a lot of people could say, "Yeah, man," but it's like it just feels like if we're in a death match, like it just doesn't seem like it doesn't hit the same because you have the main character. You just goofing off, like eyes popping out of his head, doing all this wonky stuff, blah blah blah. But it's just like you didn't have a problem with that when he was doing that with Arlong. You didn't have a problem with that when he was doing the Skypiea. You have a problem with him doing that Crocodile. You know? And if I really want to dig down into it, you could find other examples of this as well. But like this is just who Luffy is. And now granted he doesn't show it. He might not be as goofy or as creative in every single fight in the series, but he still has a track record of being like that. And it's just like one of those things where people gotta understand and realize that just because the character is not super like emo, hardcore focused and riddling off like quotes and speeches about like how you should do XYZ and take this serious and blah blah blah, does not mean that the stakes are gone. Does not mean the character doesn't care any more or any less, right? Because at the end of the day, Luffy is still Luffy, regardless if he's in Gear 5th or he's in base form or one of the other gears. Fucking 2 to 4. He is still the same person. It's just he's more free and more, flowing to do whatever he wants to do when he's in Gear 5th. But as far as in terms of power scaling, it does become hard because how do you sit there and scale somebody who can basically do anything that they set their mind to, right? But I think Oda's going to just have to do a good job of making sure that he sets levels to it. And he kind of did this with the Gorosei, but the Gorosei have their own little thing, like it's like a magic type of deal. But it seems to be if you have a certain level of like hockey, or you fight with hockey a certain type of way, you seem to be able to injure the Gorosei or the Holy Knights, I should say, but in that matter as well. So, but we don't want to get into too much of a tangent on how Gear 5 should fight, how like other people should combat with it and well. But we just really want to talk about like, is Gear Fifth a problem for you? You have a problem with the way Gear Fifth is handled? Think Luffy maybe should be a little bit more serious, or do you kind of like this more lighthearted Luffy? Me personally speaking, I like Gear Fifth Luffy. Luffy, it gives you a breath of fresh air, and Oda himself said it after a little bit after Gear Fifth was created. He said he didn't want to go down the route of the typical shonen, where combat shonen is that everything is so serious. He feels like that the genre, even though it's a battle shonen, like it got away from having a little cheesy stuff, having a little humor and stuff like that. If you go back to OG Dragon Ball, there's a lot of jokes, there's a lot of humor, but there's also serious fights, and there's humor in serious fights. You can do both. It doesn't, but it's just a matter of how the author implements. One of the best anime, in my opinion, is Gintama, and it does a great job at this. It does a great job of mixing humor into a serious moment, and it can flow just fine. But I don't want to get too much on a rant about how to handle like comedy and humor. We just really wanted to talk about Luffy and Gear Fifth. Y'all let me know what y'all think and what y'all want to hear about next. Like, comment, subscribe. All right, y'all. Peace.